Zimbabwe's Finance Minister Professor Mthuli Ncube plans to double expenditure and is forecasting 5.5% growth in 2022. The projection was contained in the 2022 budget table to the country's parliament on Thursday. From Harare, here's Farai Mwakutuya with the details.
Professor Mthuli Ncube's 927.3 billion Zimbabwe dollar, about $8.8 billion US dollar budget for the coming year will be financed by projected revenues of just over $8 billion US dollars, with the marginal 1.5% of GDP deficit to be covered through domestic borrowing. The way in which the finance minister plans to generate more revenue, though, is of concern to some.
I think you can see how a number of measures had been put in place somehow to try to deal with the leakages and at the same time increasing the tax base. That alone can be a threat, especially if you look at the tax or the sinful tax on cigarettes or tobacco. It had been revised upwards to about $25 from $20, then pay 1,000 sticks, can we say. Then if you also look at the move on the cell phone business, where you hear there is a tax of about $50 which has to be paid prior to registration of a handset, for example. Such kind of a tax, in a certain way, is impacting on the poor more than the rich.
The biggest allocations were to agriculture, as the government aims to build on last year's bumper harvest, education and health. Treasury reiterated the economy will grow by 7.8% this year, but acknowledges there are pressures that could militate against the attainment of 2022 targets.
I think there are a number of downside risks. First and foremost, we are seeing runaway government expenditure. I think there's been a huge increase in government expenditure, and also the financing of that through domestic borrowing, through the creation of money is resulted in instability within the macroeconomy. We are seeing inflationary pressures. They are being generated. Inflation has actually been going up for the past 2 months.
The inflation threat, as well as the exchange rate volatility, will somehow render the budget a bit ineffective. Within the second half of 2022, I think you will see either a need for a surplus or a supplementary budget, can we call it, or the minister then has to put up with it to say, look, any funding activities which will happen outside the budget.
Professor Ncube says the government will issue US dollar-denominated government bonds up to $100 million US dollars, which will raise funds for infrastructure development that is seen as key to engendering international confidence and attracting investment. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.